Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to sunny Pendle. Everybody remembers back on the 18th of April, we had the Prime Minister, Theresa Weak and Wobbly May, announcing the general election, thinking that she would wipe the floor with people power. But you guys that are here today, and the tens of thousands and the millions out there, sent a clear message to the Tory party that we've had enough of their cuts. The mainstream media and the Conservatives said, Jeremy, absolutely no chance. Here in Pendle, we had our sitting MP, Andrew I do nothing but photograph Stevenson, predicting that he would win by 10,000, but little did he know that people power would ruin him. And we almost ruined him on the 8th of June by coming that close that we next time will take him out completely. As leader of the Labour-led council, it's certainly a privilege for me, on behalf of everybody that's here this afternoon and the people that are not here from Pendle and beyond, to welcome the leader of the Labour Party and the next Prime Minister of Britain, Jeremy Corbyn!
Thank you, Pendle! Thank you for inviting me, and thanks for being here today in this beautiful park. I'm sorry if you've had a bit of a wait. We've done a lot of events all day today. I want to thank you for all you did in the election campaign, all the support that you gave, and the way in which we managed to turn the whole election around. When it started, every newspaper pundit, every expert on the planet said, it's a walk in the park. The Tories are going to win, Labour can't do it. Two things happened. One, we, us, members, activists, trade union members, Labour Party members, went out there with confidence of the message we are giving to people and an optimism of what is possible in a world rather than just offering to manage things as they are. And secondly was our manifesto, for the many, not the few. That document came out, that document set out our policies, our general approach, and what we wanted to do in the world. And you know what? Even now, 2 months after the election, it's on its third reprint as people still want copies of the Tory party. Thanks. The Tory party, see, we're good socialists here, they bring water to you. The Tory party manifesto was taken down on their website 3 hours after the election was over. Why would that be? Maybe they were just a bit ashamed of some of the stuff they put in it. But our campaign started in, yes, a difficult time, a difficult situation. But we went out there. We campaigned all over the country. I did 100 events myself all over the country. And a lot of people worked really hard, really hard, particularly young people, to get others to register to vote. 2 million people joined the electoral register in 2 weeks. And we put that message out there of what a different world it could be and what a government dedicated towards justice, peace and equality could achieve. And we didn't win the election, that I fully concede, but we increased the Labour vote by 3 million across the whole country, more than at any time since 1945, and the highest Labour vote for very, very many years. And in crucial marginal constituencies like Pendle, sadly we didn't quite make it, but we're here, we're strong, we're now, and we're ready whenever an election comes to take it on all again and make sure we do win that majority in Parliament to deliver a Labour government. But the important thing was that the manifesto offered something different. There was a world banking crisis in 2008. That crisis was brought about by greed, by deregulation, by a subprime mortgage crisis in the United States, was brought about by a free market economy, a global free market economy. The results of that were that governments all around the world bailed out banks, and governments in many countries around the world then did what they're trying to do in Britain. They said, we'll pay for the crisis by cutting public expenditure, by reducing taxation at the top end, by increasing the burden at the bottom end, and cutting expenditure on local councils, on health, on education, on housing, on all the vital services that we've got, and we will freeze wages, or indeed in reality have wage reduction. So 7 years of austerity, 7 years of cuts, 7 years of closures, 7 years of increasing class sizes, longer hospital waiting lists, longer housing waiting lists, loss of libraries, swimming pools, and so many other things all around the country. And we're still being lectured that all that matters is further deregulation of the workforce, further disempowerment of communities, and further cuts down the line. Our economic strategy, which was so brilliantly put forward by John McDonnell in the election campaign, said we can, should, must, and above all will do things very differently in the future. Our manifesto called time on austerity, called time on attacking the poorest in order to protect the riches and the values of the richest within our society. And so, in the campaign, the fundamental message was that we would challenge austerity, that we would increase taxation for the biggest corporations and businesses, not the small ones, and we would increase the taxation costs of the very wealthiest, the top 5% in our society. Why? Because we can no longer afford these levels of inequality within our society. It actually holds us all back. Bernie Sanders said once in a campaign meeting he was doing in a very poor area of what is termed the Rust Belt in the USA. He said, America is a great, rich, wonderful, powerful country. America can afford anything except the levels of inequality that America has at the present time. We have a government, we have a party in power that basically believes in exactly the same as those that want to increase levels of inequality. And so we put forward a manifesto that at its core was about investment, was about establishing a national investment bank which would be publicly run and publicly owned and regionally based, so that the Northwest, the Northeast, the East Midlands, the areas that have the least level of public investment would get a fair crack of the whip and be properly treated. This government's first thing after the election is to cancel electrification of rail lines all across the north and show its contempt. Sorry, what happened to the Northern Powerhouse? What happened to that they said so much about? It seems to have disappeared on June the 9th. And so we put forward that view. And we would have a Labour government that wouldn't walk by when the steel industry was in problems, would instead intervene, take it on if necessary, above all invest in it so we have a manufacturing base, and a national investment bank that would recognise the lack of investment in so many Pennine towns, the loss of traditional industries that haven't always been replaced by the same level of high-skilled, high-wage employment, does mean you have to have public intervention to bring about that economic development for the future all across this region. And use local authorities as part of the support and advice network that would bring that about. That is the fundamental economic strategy. But it's also about pay levels, about wage levels, and about rights at work. And so, yes, we would bring in a national living wage. It was Labour who brought in the national minimum wage in the teeth of Tory opposition. We'd go further and bring in a national living wage of £10 an hour, which is what the TUC figure is for the whole country. And that would help to regenerate communities and improve the living standards of so many. And we'd end the public sector pay cap and allow workers' representatives through their unions to negotiate freely wages and conditions in the health service and elsewhere. We gave the Tories, we gave the Lib Dems, we gave everybody else the chance to vote to end the public sector pay cap in the first vote in the new Parliament. What did they do? Yeah, the other opposition parties voted with us. The Tories and their newfound friends in the Democratic Unionist Party of Northern Ireland voted to keep the cap. That says everything you need to know about the newfound friendship between the Tories and the DUP. We didn't win that vote. We're going to put it again and again. We're going to keep challenging them in Parliament to bring about the end of this government and a general election. But we also recognise there are some big important decisions that have to be made. There was a referendum, it came to a decision, we respect that result. But people didn't vote for poverty, didn't vote to lose their job, didn't vote to lose their regulations, didn't vote to end whatever protections are offered at work. Our 20-point Workers' Rights Manifesto, published on May Day by Becky Long-Bailey, did include the rights of full rights at work from day one of your employment, the right to trade union representation, health and safety representation, safety at work and training. All those issues that are so important. We put all those forward because we believe in them, and that's the kind of world and society we want to live in. And we've made it clear that in our negotiations with the European Union, our intention is to achieve a tariff-free trade access to the European market. We need that to protect jobs and industries in this country, and we're not going to turn this country into a sort of Panama-style tax haven on the shores of Europe as a playground for the wealthy. We want an economy that works for all, not glories in the prosperity and wealth of the minority and the few. And we're not going to go down the road of the Tories of doing a sweetheart deal with Donald Trump to bring in a transatlantic trade and investment partnership that would tear up workers' conditions on both sides of the Atlantic and damage all the tough regulations that are necessary on food safety and environmental protection. And we'd have a government that would be prepared quite readily to pick up the phone and say to Donald Trump, sorry, you are wrong about the Paris Climate Change Accord. We need that agreement. We need to live in and protect this planet for the future. You'd have a government that would be prepared to stand up for the needs of the whole planet and play our part. Is the kind of government that we could have had, that we're going to get in this country. But it's also about the opportunities for the future. Children have one childhood, children have one chance at education, young people mostly have one chance of going to college or university. And I'm very determined that every child should have a decent start in life. That's why we included in our manifesto 30 hours free childcare per week, pre-primary school years for every child in every part of the country. And that in primary school there would be some changes. We'd fund them properly, so no longer would there be supersized and oversized classes, that there would be properly sized classes, regulated, and there would be a free school meal for every child in every day in every primary school, eating it together as a message of the kind of society we want them to grow up in. And I also believe in the creativity of our children and the imagination. Let their imagination flow, let the creativity they've got that's flow. Therefore, I'm very proud of that section of our manifesto which said we'd have a pupil arts premium so that every child can learn a musical instrument in their school years. Because these things are important. And as they go on, my generation had the chance of going to college or university essentially free. They could get, there was no fees, and they could get a grant, a maintenance grant, to go through university or college. It's not my place, as this generation, to take it away from the next generation. Therefore, we looked very hard and very long at the issue of how we deal with the question of the debt of the next generation of those young people wanting to go to college or university or adults. And so we decided on 4 things. 1, we would bring back the educational maintenance allowance to support young people staying on in education. Secondly, that we would end college fees. Thirdly, university fees. And fourthly, adult education is very, very important. The right to go back to college, the right to develop yourself, the right to learn something else. It's proper funding of that. Now all this costs, that I fully acknowledge, but it has to be paid for. Therefore what we're saying is corporation tax should not be lowered, it should be raised over the lifetime of Parliament to 26% in order to pay for it. Because those opportunities for education are so very, very important. And it is about health. Our health service is the most precious and most important thing we have in our society. It was the creation of that 1945 Labour government that in the midst of all the chaos of the post-war period decided the priority was the health of the people and brought in the National Health Service. I'm like all of you, we're all #1 equal in our support for the NHS. But I tell you this, it's under threat. It's under threat from an internal market, it's under threat from a pay freeze, it's under threat from the privatisation and franchising out of services, and it's under threat because of the crisis in social care and the crisis in mental health. It needs help, it needs support, and it needs our solidarity, and its employees, its workers need to get the proper pay that they deserve. Therefore it would be a Labour government that invests in the NHS and recognises the waste, and it is a waste, of not investing properly in social care. 1 million people need social care and often can't get it. Therefore, many have to give up work, mainly women, give up work in order to be able to survive, to look after those people that need it. That's not right. We need a care service that is properly funded, not sweetheart deals between the government and Surrey County Council. We need a fair provision of social care all over the country, and therefore we'll set up a national care service to ensure that is available in all parts of the country. Because, yes, any of us could get cancer, any of us could have a heart attack, any of us could have a serious medical condition, and the NHS would be there for us. But if we get dementia, not always there, because that is taken care of by social care, and that social care is sometimes not available. We have to recognise it's our duty as a community to care for everybody else in our community. It is what we're about as a party and a movement. And so that parity of esteem of mental health and physical health is also important. We deal with the mental health crisis in this country by ending the stigma, by properly supporting mental health services, and in particular supporting young people going through a crisis in school or college where they often don't know where to turn to or who to turn to. Surely it's up to all of us to ensure there is a mental health service that's there and available and supportive of them, not a 6-month wait for therapy when you've first gone to a GP to ask for help. So what I'm trying to set out is the principles of what we would want to do as a party in government, what we want to achieve as a party. We have a chance. We have an opportunity. We have a chance and an opportunity because of the manifesto we put forward, because of the huge levels of support we achieved in the general election, and that gives us the springboard to get more support. But it's also about how we challenge the issues of the day. How we have a foreign policy based on peace, on justice, on respect for human rights, and not one that blames refugees for the crisis they've come from, instead starts to look at the crisis they've come from and why the crisis is there and what we can do about it. And to say to those who don't seem to always understand these issues, when white supremacists and Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan rear their head in Charlottesville in the United States, that's a stain on the memory of Martin Luther King and all those civil rights activists. It's a sign of the rise of racism, of intolerance, of Islamophobia, of anti-Semitism, of all the other forms of racism on the planet. Surely everybody in authority, every elected political leader, should be able unequivocally to condemn racism in any form, wherever it rears its head. So we don't denigrate people, we don't denigrate communities, we don't denigrate faiths of any sort. We live in a multicultural, multi-faith society and environment. And we want a society that, as I said earlier, in respect of Paris climate change, understands and respects our environment. Political change comes about because people activate themselves and people do things and people have ideas. That's why our party was founded in the first place. Very brave people in towns and cities like this came together to form trade unions against often the brutality of local employers, made enormous sacrifices to form that sense of solidarity. Those actions helped to build political movements which gave the universal right to vote, got women the right to vote, got anti-discrimination legislation, got rights of people within our society. All the rights that we have and enjoy, the democracy we have, didn't come from above. It came from people and popular movements all through our society and our history. And so when, as I see in front of me, there's a sign up there saying to oppose fracking across Lancashire, I support that, because it is about standing up for the good of our environment as a whole. When I see people campaigning to defend and support our National Health Service, that again is a sign of a healthy and strong and vibrant democracy. So in this period we've got at the moment, we have the general policies laid out by our party in the manifesto for the many, not the few, and I'm very proud of the document and the work that went into it. We have now the opportunity to take that message out all across the country. So after the general election, we decided we'd go out campaigning everywhere else. And I thought the best place to start was actually Hastings on the south coast. So we went there on a Saturday morning, the Home Secretary's constituency. She was not available that morning, so I went to speak instead. And there were more than 2,000 people came along because they were disappointed at not quite gaining that constituency, but determined to do it in the future, just like you have come out here today. And we take that message across. Because in the general election campaign, we had the media against us, we had lots of people against us, but we had two things going for us. Those who use social media to mobilise, and those that go in the streets and town squares, shopping centres and door to door in order to talk about politics and talk about the different world that we could have if we're strong enough to believe in it and work to achieve it. So we're doing a campaign all over the country. I'm doing at least 40 constituencies between the end of Parliament in July and the return when we go back for the Labour Party conference in September. And it's bringing together lots of people. But you've all got ideas. You've all got knowledge. You've all got unique experiences and abilities. We need those experiences, those knowledge, those ideas coming together to help us frame our strategy and policies for the future. So whenever that general election comes, we're ready for it. We'll campaign in every town centre all across the country. We will knock on all those doors. But we'll do it now as well. We'll do it now as well, not just for next year's council elections, but because people need to be aware that this government in office, continuing underfunding health, continuing underfunding education, continuing a low-wage economy, increasing injustice and inequality within our society, there is an alternative available. Nobody can say there isn't a choice in British politics anymore. And so, when people with disabilities campaign against the work capability test, when people campaign against racism, abuse and intolerance, they're all part of a movement that's challenging a norm in society. That's what we're doing here today in this wonderful park. And on our campaign tours, we have public rallies, but we also spend a lot of time meeting the experts. People that volunteer their time in food banks, people that work in trade unions, people that work in housing associations or housing departments, people that work in different industries and factories, so that we're all the better informed. That's what's different about our party. We're not an elite, we're not far away, we are popular and of the people. I'm proud to lead this party, I'm proud of what we've achieved, but I'll be even prouder when we bring on a general election, when we win that election, when we win a Labour MP here for Pendle, when we gain that victory. Pendle, thank you very much. I think the rain is coming down.
We need the election soon!
Can we just hear it one more time for Jeremy Corbyn? Just as the sun's about to go down and the rain's about to start, can I thank each and every person that's come here on behalf of Pendle Labour Party, all the volunteers, you're fantastic people, and let's get a Labour MP in Pendle. Thank you!